All right. Welcome back, everyone. So this month is at Steve's is all about the microbiome, which is why I am mind-blowingly excited for our special guest this week, Dr. Odette Suter. Dr. Suter is a best-selling author, wonderful holistic veterinarian, passionate educator, and is absolutely the person to go to if you want to learn about your pet's microbiome. So Dr. Suter, welcome.
Well, thank you so much, Brad, for having me. It's a pleasure and an honor. And as you know, we talked earlier. I'm so passionate about it that I have so much to talk about.
I'm glad because I'm really, really excited to listen. So I'm excited for this week's and I'm excited for next week's episode with you. Today we're going to talk all about what the microbiome is and why it's pretty much just as important as any other organ in the body. Things that can damage or unbalance the microbiome, how to recognize a pet in need of some help, and how to help the microbiome out at home. Next week we're going to dive deeper. We'll be back again and we'll answer audience questions from today. So whether you're seeing this live or a few days after, toss your questions into the comments and we will hit them next week. Then on the 25th and the 26th, we'll be presenting our webinar, The Microbiome. So you can register for that on the Steve's Facebook page. So Dr. Suter, this is, I think, the question of the day. What is the microbiome and why is it so important?
Yeah, so the microbiome is basically an assortment of little microscopic little bugs that live in and around us. And those can be bacteria, fungi, archaea, which are like a more ancient type of bacteria. There are parasites. So all the little microorganisms are part of the microbiome. But we also have a lot of viruses that are part of the microbiome. And some of them are pathogenic viruses like coronavirus, for example, or parvovirus. But a lot of these viruses are really there to help maintain that community and that balance within the community. So there are more viruses that are specific to certain microbes. So for example, there are viruses that are specific to E. coli. And so we can use these little viruses and create a cocktail to then address E. coli overgrowth, for example. So most of the viruses that are in the gut are really more specific to bacteria and less so the pathogenic types that we're more familiar with. But anyways, it's just the whole body is teeming with microbes, and we are outnumbered by microbes by a factor of 10. The cells of the body are outnumbered by a factor of 10, depending on whether we just went to the bathroom or not. So, so it varies somewhere between 1 and a factor of 10.
That's unbelievable. So on an average day, microbes outnumber my own cells 10 to 1.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And then from a genetic perspective, they outnumber the body by a factor of about 1,200. So genetic material there's a whole lot more genetic material in the microbes than there is in the humans. And when you look at how many genes a human or animal or dog has compared to a fruit fly or a flea, I can't remember. We're kind of in the middle. So I think the flea has more than a fruit fly, and we're kind of somewhere in the middle. So that means that a lot of the genetic encodement really comes from the microbes and not so much from the cells of the body. And that's really the fascinating part, because it really shows us that it's the microbes that are running the show and not the cells of the body, really. And that's why these microbes are so important. You asked, why are they so important? Well, because they're the ones who run the ship. They work day and night. I call them the little elves. It's like Santa's workshop. Day and night, day and night, and day and night. And when you look at medicine in general, drugs and things like that, you have to give it. It does its thing, and then it's done, and then you have to give it again. Mm-hmm. But these little elves, they continuously work. They're nonstop going, and so if we can get them at the right level, in the right balance, in the right amounts, and all of that. And if we don't disturb them too much, then they can actually work wonders for the body. And that's really the most fascinating thing, because it can address everything, and to a degree of intelligence and detail that there's no way that our brain can ever comprehend that.
Right.
Or
You were saying before that it's pretty much a whole new way. It's like opening a whole new door in the medical community. It's like
yeah,
a whole, yeah.
yeah. I mean,
Which,
sorry, go ahead.
no, go ahead. You said it much more eloquently.
Yeah, well, when I was doing some research last summer for my AHV, my holistic veterinary lectures that I did on the microbiome, in the process, I realized that whatever we are learning in veterinary school, although very important, it's outdated. It's like I felt like I was a relic just reading that. I'm like, oh my God. Because it's not just a new drug or a new fad or a new whatever. It's an entirely new way of addressing medical issues and health and creating better health, is to reintegrate that. And it's an entirely new paradigm. It's not something that we've ever had on this planet. I mean, we've always had it, but I mean, it's always been there.
Right. We've
tried
never recognized it and its significance until now.
Yeah, exactly. And now with all that research that's coming out, I mean, it's diving into areas like that are way beyond me, and way beyond anything that we've learned in vet school. Again, that basic knowledge of anatomy, physiology, biochemistry, and all of that is really, really, really important.
Right.
But we have to, with this new knowledge that's coming out, we really need to shift, because that's where the medicine of the future is. And when we look at how well medicine is doing these days, it's not really flattering because we have skyrocketing chronic diseases, so many GI issues, so many, cancers, etc. And that basically points to the fact that we're not doing that great. I mean, we've obviously grown to the place where we are now, but there's a whole lot further to go. And I think that in that exploration, there are going to be solutions in different ways than we've seen them. So it's really moving into an entirely different paradigm, where it's not even anymore about natural or holistic or conventional. It's just going to be an entirely new way of doing medicine, of practicing medicine, of addressing the body and health.
Microbial medicine.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Boy, so this is truly the frontier. We have just reached a new level of medicine that we're trying to grasp, trying to get an understanding of.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's mind-blowing. So why did you become so fascinated with the world of microbes? What woke you up to this?
Well, I blame it on Dr. Margot Roman, who you may be familiar with. She's kind of the ultimate one who started the whole, fecal transplant, microbiome therapy sort of process and thinking. And she's been educating a lot of veterinarians, including myself. So I really attribute it to her and her passion for it, and so I got infected. She's a little contagious. So that's how it happened. And then just met some other people from Animal Biome, for example, Holly Gans and her husband Carlton, and some other people there who are just as passionate. So we've all kind of continued the passion together and expand. And it's been quite amazing. And then obviously my very first fecal transplant patient that I had was a German Shepherd who had chronic diarrhea for 2 years. He was diagnosed with IBD, and they had done all sorts of things, from the conventional, Hills or Purina diet, whatever it may have been, and then moving over to raw, and he still had issues, and he had a lot of anxiety. He was a little bit overweight. He was itchy. And so I did a fecal transplant on him. And he was a little tired afterwards, apparently, according to the owner. But the next day, his energy level was through the roof. He started playing with his brother. His anxiety level came way down, which before that, it was debilitating to him. He was actually supposed to be a police dog, but they couldn't use him because he had so much anxiety going on. So in any case, his whole behavior changed. Obviously, his poop solidified. So within a week, his poop was normal. Even the next day it was already better, but then it continued to improve. And I was just amazed because there's no medicine that can do that,
Right.
In this elegant not that elegant, but in a very elegant way. You just provide it what the body really needs in like a massive amount. I mean, I basically gave him a massive infusion of these microbial elves, as I call them, and they started to work right away and very powerfully and intelligently.
Mm-hmm.
So what kind of medicine do you know that can do that? I mean, I don't know any.
Right. Absolutely. No, it's too bad that we have almost abused the microbiome for so long, right? Because up until now, we've almost had a war on microbes, get cleaner and cleaner and cleaner.
Mm-hmm.
And to the point where we're driving species to extinction.
Mm-hmm.
And now we're just starting to recognize that, oh my God, these guys are essential for staying healthy, for remaining healthy, and they can actually help turn your health around or help us measure health as well, right? We can get a picture of an animal's health, maybe any kind of diseases that are starting up or going on just from looking at their microbiota, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. There's definitely some research being done on that level as well to figure it out. And, for example, in my own experience, oftentimes the dogs that have more of and cats that have reflux, they tend to have E. coli overgrowth. So that's just my very personal experience because I do a lot of microbiome testing. And so that's what I started noticing is all these dogs and cats that are, lip licking and empty swallowing, licking surfaces, just feeling uncomfortable, restless at night, that sort of thing. Some of them have E. coli overgrowth.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
And is that based on diet? Is it based on living conditions? Is it based on environment, do you think? Or
well, it's a little bit of a lot of different things because when we look at all the things that can affect the microbiome, there are a lot of them. Obviously, drugs can affect the microbiome. There are in the human field, they have done some research and they looked at 1,200 different drugs that are on the market of all different therapeutic classes. So that's antibiotics, antiseptics, antiparasitics, anti-inflammatories, etc. So not just one class of drug.
right.
And they found that 144 of the antibiotics, 12 antiseptics, 88 antiparasitics, antivirals, antifungals, and then 835 human targeted drugs were affecting the gut microbiome.
Wow.
So 1,200 drugs. I mean, how many drugs do we have in the veterinary field? I've never counted, but it probably would cover just about almost every one of them. And of course, we're all familiar with antibiotics playing a big role in the microbial populations and decimating some of them. And that's really where these overgrowths come from. It's like there's something that's affecting the microbiome where it's killing off certain microbes, and then other microbes are capable of then taking up that space, because when you have some that die, you end up with a bit of a hole, and then others take over and they take up that space. And so that's how these imbalances and then overgrowths happen in the microbiome.
And so the balance would be kind of it would be particular to each animal, right? Like a dog is going to have a very different balance of gut bacteria per se than a cat or a human.
Yeah. I mean, dogs and cats are definitely a bit more similar, but in humans, there are some studies that are saying that that compare humans to dogs and cats as well, and they say that there are some similarities, but there are definitely some differences. Like, for example, one bacterial group or family called Fusobacterium is very important for dogs and cats because it helps to process protein, whereas in humans it can cause colon cancer. So humans are not supposed to have a lot of those, whereas dogs and cats, they're supposed to have a good amount.
Right.
So there's definitely a difference there. But the thing is, especially when we live with animals, there's more of a similarity that's going to take shape in a way because we live together. And especially as myself as a veterinarian dealing with animals all the time, my microbiome is probably more like the ones of a dog and cat than the one of a human, because it seems like I have more contact with animals, and I stick my finger up their butt, and
Right.
I mean, I do a glove around it, but still, I got to put my nose close when I stick a thermometer in there so that I can get past all the fur and see
Right.
where
Yeah.
the hole is. It's like, yeah.
Yeah, there are microbes in every breath that you take in, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. So there's a lot of overlap, but there are also certain ones that are different.
Mm-hmm. And then how does diet play a role in shaping your microbiome? Like, if I were to feed my dog as though he were a cow, well, he's not going to be very happy, right? But I'm not saying he would develop a microbiome like a cow, but his microbiome would end up looking a lot different than a dog who ate, say, something like Steve's that's really heavily raw meat based.
Yeah, definitely. The microbiome will always shape around what kind of food they get. So because the way these microbes survive or live is that they eat the food that comes down, into the digestive tract. So whatever the animal eats. So if an animal is eating a lot of carbohydrates, there will be more microbes present that process carbohydrates. If you have a diet that's richer in protein, then you have a microbiome that is going to be geared more towards that. But we've also seen from some of the research and also experiences, of different veterinarians, that dogs that are, that don't have enough fiber in their diet, that they will tend to have a microbiome that is less diverse. Because what we're looking for a lot of diversity, because each of these microbes has a different function and does different things. It's like having a bunch of different people. They all have different skills, right? You don't want to have like 20,000 clones of me. That would be useless. I mean, that would be like a waste. So same with microbes. We want to have a lot of different types of microbes so that they can do a lot of different jobs and help the body out that way. And when we look at certain cultures that are still much closer to nature, some of the indigenous people in Africa, for example, they have a lot more varieties, many more species of microbes in the gut than Western cultures. And we see that too in dogs and cats that live in apartments, right, versus the ones that live in more of a rural area. They're going to have very different microbiomes and different numbers of species. So that's why it's good to go to different environments, to go, out in the forest, out, and travel different places, eat different foods and so on, because that all helps to replenish the microbiome. So one thing that I do, when I'm at the airport, I hang out in the bathroom because that's where you have the most microbes floating around, but you also have the nasty smells of whatever they're trying to do to get
all of the powerful air fresheners they're spraying out every 30 seconds.
Yeah, disgusting. But in any case, that's one fun way of replenishing one's microbiome. I don't know if it works or not, but I get a kick out of it. I post photos of it and people laugh.
You know how to party. Yeah.
Yeah. Because in the end, the microbiome is also very responsive to stress. So if we're all stressed out all the time, it changes the whole chemistry of the body, and that affects how the microbes are. And that's why there's a possibility of having stress diarrhea, for example, or stress vomiting. So the microbiome is very responsive to how the emotions are, and vice versa too. The emotions are very much dictated by the microbiome. For example, sugar cravings. Why do we have sugar cravings? Well, it's because the microbes are sending signals up into the brain that they're hungry. And then the brain goes, oh, okay, let me go eat that. So they are basically telling us what to eat and what, and how to be. So if you have a dog who destroyed your couch, the dog
My
knows.
microbes made me do it, man.
Yeah, the microbes.
But that's a great point. I mean, there was a fun, really small study that I think it was the University of Oregon did, where they compared aggressive dogs and non-aggressive dogs in shelters, and then they found out that the aggressive dogs had distinct dominance. They had certain microbes dominating in their gut bacteria, whereas the non-aggressive dogs had a different type of microbes dominating their gut microbiome.
Yeah.
I think that's so interesting that whatever it is that you're growing, whatever you're nurturing there in your gut can have that much of an effect on how you feel and how you act.
Yeah, yeah. And that really then begs the question, who are we? Or what are we? And we have to kind of reestablish, yeah, how we see ourselves and our animals and everything. And because the thing is, with the whole trying to kill everything and disinfect everything, we've created a lot of separation and disconnect. And that's what we see. The result on this planet is that we are so disconnected to the point where we're barely out in nature anymore. Same with our animals. I see so many animals that never set foot outside, or not enough anyway. And we've separated ourselves off from nature to a point where we're a pretty sick population these days, and we've also in the process destroyed a lot of nature. And so re-embracing the microbes as being a part of us and befriending them and seeing them for what they are, and the amazing things that they do for us, I feel is going to also reconnect us with nature and with health and everything that we've disconnected ourselves from. So it's not just a paradigm shift in the way that we practice medicine, but it's also a paradigm shift in the way that we live.
Yeah, so when we disconnect ourselves, we encourage these imbalances within our microbiome, right? We discourage diversity within our own microbiome, and as a result of that, or a correlation to that, our health can suffer in different ways, right? Or even just our mood. Maybe I'm not living the best, happiest life I could because I'm lacking diversity, because I don't get outside enough, because I always think of the microbiome as kind of a spacesuit with full life support built in. And it kind of helps control everything. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I like that. I really like that.
So if something's not working quite right, you're going to survive. You'll survive with not quite enough oxygen, but you're not thriving. You're not going to be at your best.
Exactly. Very well said.
So what are some common everyday stressors for the microbiome, for our dogs and cats in our homes?
So in the homes, well, one that most people are probably not going to be all that happy to hear is EMFs. So electromagnetic radiation in the homes is one of the bigger challenges for the microbiome, because the microbes, they all use electrical signaling, aside from also chemical signaling among each other. And so when we have a Wi-Fi, a cell phone sitting right next to our animals or ourselves, or also, I mean, it's not like they are just in that area. They do tend to spread, although the closer we are, the worse they are. But basically, if we have electromagnetic radiation that is interfering with the electromagnetic communication that is happening between the microbes, they get disoriented. So then their communication within their communities isn't working as well. And as we know, when there's a breakdown of communication, chaos ensues. You know, we can take a company, right? If the employees are not communicating with each other, or a family, let's go even further back, a family, if they're not communicating, it's just going to be a lot of disruption and chaos and likely a lot of pain in the process. And so that's definitely one thing to take into consideration. And there have been studies done, especially with fungi, which are part of the microbiome, not just of our own bodies, the skin, etc., but also the air and the environment that we live in. There's been a huge increase in the amount of toxins that these mold types of organisms produce, and the toxins that they produce are also a lot more virulent. So they're even, they're more toxic. So not only is there, I think it's 600 or 6,000 times more. I can't remember the exact number, but it's a huge amount that because they're kind of trying to fight and rebalance the whole environment. And that's what we see, anytime we have an overgrowth growth or like an imbalance, the system is attempting to rebalance itself. Unfortunately, sometimes it's not working quite as well as we'd hoped. But yeah. So anyway, EMFs are one of them. And then obviously glyphosate is a huge deal as well. Glyphosate is being sprayed everywhere on the planet these days. So that's a big contributor, because glyphosate, which is the active ingredient of Roundup, for those who don't know, is an antibacterial. So it kills things, and it does a whole lot of other things as well, but it certainly kills microbes. And then water is an important part as well, especially city water that's not filtered, contains a lot of chlorine, fluoride, and all sorts of other things in it, including whatever drugs we humans take, because they go down out through the urine or our own feces, and then they get recycled back into the water system. So drinking unfiltered water is like drinking polypharmacy. So multiple drugs. So if you have depression, you can just drink unfiltered water, and then maybe you'll get your antidepressant that way.
That's a cheap way to do it.
Yeah, sure. And then what else? Food sensitivities obviously can also cause microbial imbalance, because it stimulates the inflammation in the gut. And then as a result, that inflammation has an effect on the microbiome, and vice versa. But there are all sorts of other toxins that are in the environment that affect the gut. I mentioned stress earlier. Too much or too little exercise will also affect the microbiome. And then obviously poor diet. That kind of goes without saying.
Well, can we dive into poor diet just a little bit? I'd love to hear, how does poor diet kind of affect the microbiome?
Yeah, well, in the field of pet food, pet foods, unfortunately, the one of the biggest issues is that a lot of these big companies like Nestle and whoever owns Hills, I can't remember who, but a lot of these big food companies that make human products, they have so much garbage that comes from that production that they have to put it somewhere. So if they were to put it on a garbage truck, or had to recycle it in some other ways, they would have to pay money for it. So what they do, instead of spending more money on getting rid of their own waste, they put it into dog food. So a lot of these bigger companies, they use really bad ingredients for animal foods that are yeah, they're not life sustaining in any way, shape, or form. And if people really knew and had seen some of the pictures and actually read the labels on the back of the bags that they feed their animals and research a little bit what these different things are, they would actually find out that what they're feeding is basically garbage, and relatively toxic. And so that obviously is not good for the microbiome either, because the microbiome wants to have quality food. I mean, that's what it's made to thrive on, right? It's just like humans or animals in general, we're meant to thrive on the diets of that our ancestors ate, not McDonald's or other kind of fast food. And a lot of these dry food diets, and also some of the canned foods from some of these companies are so bad because that food is just dead. It has no energy in it anymore. It's just like a piece of cardboard, and no body can sustain on that. No microbe can sustain on that. Although I think there are some microbes that can eat cardboard as well.
Well, I'm sure that there are microbes that can eat these things and probably thrive on them, but those may not be the microbes that you want to encourage to grow in your pet, right? And that's kind of the issue of feeding really inappropriate foods. Yes, it's a great source of protein, maybe. It is not a great source of, the essential amino acids, but you could say it's a great source of protein. But what else is coming in with that food? And then what type of bacteria, fungi, what type of microbes is that food feeding?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, generally, I'm not that as worried about the microbes that come with the food, because the gut of a dog and a cat, or the stomach of a dog and a cat have a very low pH if they're healthy. So whatever microbes that come with that generally get killed. But I'm more concerned about all the toxins that come with it, heavy metals and other types of toxins, fungal toxins, because a lot of these foods, they are prone to having mold spores in them, and toxins from that, and rancid oils, all things that are not very good for the body. So, and some foods have been found to have euthanasia solution in it.
Right.
And we don't know what's happening currently with all these reports that people probably have heard of, Purina being one of them, but there are other brands that also are affected or are affecting animals to degree where there are a lot of reports coming in of animals either getting severely sick and then even dying. So we don't know exactly what it is yet that's causing it, and what the culprit is, which makes it hard to treat. But we can't expect to have health on junk food, because kibble is like feeding a child Cheerios their entire life. I mean, sure, Cheerios is probably very deficient in certain things because it's in no way balanced, but it's very similar. It's just empty calories.
Fortified Cheerios, sure.
Yeah. So it's not healthy.
And then you're not going to encourage the bacteria that may play other roles in their body. You're not going to encourage microbes that may also play other important roles when you're feeding inappropriate foods, right? You're growing microbes that maybe are not the microbes that you want in that animal,
yeah,
or at least giving them an upper hand in this balance.
Yeah.
So what are some visible signs that my dog might have a microbiome imbalance? Are there any? Can I look at him and go, oh, he's got probably a great microbiome. He's probably in really good balance. Or are there some signs or symptoms that you can kind of at least raise the hairs on the back of your neck a little bit?
Right. It's easier to look at an animal who has issues to think or suspect that they have a microbial imbalance than it is for a healthy animal. For example, some years back, I had a really amazing donor dog for fecal transplants. So the results were off the charts. And then he passed away. He was older already, so he passed away. And then I looked for a new one, and he was a German Shepherd, grew up out in rural somewhere, had never been vaccinated. I think he only had one rabies vaccine, no antibiotics, no deworming, no, I mean, very clean, great diet and everything. And his microbiome was not good enough. I mean, it was good enough for him, but it was not good enough for fecal transplants. I had his microbiome tested, and Animal Biome, who did the test, they said they would not use him for a donor because his microbiome was not good enough. So just because they don't have GI issues, obvious GI issues or skin issues, does not mean that their microbiome is in good shape. And that's why I've been recommending to do microbial testing at least every year, or also after any sort of bigger intervention like a dental or some other kind of stressor or a move somewhere, anything that involves a big change in life. I've been recommending to do some testing as well, because without testing we don't really know. And I have a number of dogs where I do regular fecal transplant or biome testing, and they have no GI signs at all. So it's hard, but certainly if you have one that has GI signs, you definitely want to check. But then again, recently I also had a puppy who has GI signs. I did the microbiome testing and we didn't see anything, that it was balanced. So that kind of then begs the question, what else is going on? But the thing is too, as far as testing is concerned, we're still a bit more limited. So we only test certain things because there are a gazillion microbial strains. We have genus, and then family and species and strains, and so it's like taking the Johnsons of the world, going to the Johnsons of Massachusetts or wherever they came from, and then going to the Johnsons who are actually blood related, and then to the family level, and then the individual level. And so we don't have, we have a way of testing, all the way down to the individual level, individual strain level. But unfortunately, with it's a little bit more expensive. It's expensive to do that sort of testing. And we also don't exactly know what to do with all that information.
Yeah.
Because we don't have quite enough knowledge to know all the things that all these microbes do. So with time that will be revealed. So testing is not 100% either.
So after you've done a test, and maybe a dog has an unbalanced microbiome, maybe he's had food sensitivities for 6 months, a couple of years or something like that, and his owner got fed up and brought him to you, and you guys do a test. We don't have to get too specific, but what are some of the different microbiome related treatments that you do at the veterinary level with animals who are struggling?
Yeah, so I don't really bother with probiotics anymore. I have found I've used probiotics for years and never really seen much of a difference. So I've just stopped carrying them because I'm not really wanting to spend people's money on something that I don't really see working all that well. So I do fecal transplants, but it depends a little bit. If they have an overgrowth of E. coli, then I will give them this viral cocktail that will actually kill the E. coli to decrease the numbers, so that then other bacteria can take hold. With Clostridium overgrowth, I will use Saccharomyces boulardii, which is a beneficial yeast, and then do the fecal transplant concurrently, because I want to decrease the overgrowth of some of these pathogens while increasing the beneficial microbes.
And by using microbes to target them, you can get very specific, right? If you're using, like you said, there's this virus that goes after E. coli. That way you can get very specific, and you're not taking out broad categories or more than you want. Right. Wow, that's unbelievable.
Yeah, it's not like antibiotics or metronidazole, who basically wipe out everybody.
Right, yeah.
So yeah, it's much more specific that way. But then fecal transplants are not very specific in a way. because you're basically taking the whole healthy microbiome from a healthy dog and you're putting it into an unhealthy animal. So you're basically putting in all the bacteria, all the viruses, and then with it also a lot of the, probably neurotransmitters and other types of chemicals that these bacteria or microbes have made in the donor dog. So you're putting all of these into your recipient dog as well. So it's like, yeah, I mean, you're basically reseeding the microbiome, but you're also giving some of the good, metabolites that they make.
Some of the postbiotics. You're helping to jumpstart the system right away as well, so they get some feel good right away.
Yeah.
If your gut biome is out of balance and you're not producing enough serotonin, and getting that good balance, and at the same time getting a jump of serotonin is really going to help you get right back on the right page.
Yeah.
Well, that's really cool.
Yeah, it's really amazing. And there's probiotics can't do that. Probiotics, they're like, I don't know, a few species in the probiotic, whereas in the gut there's like 100 to or 300 to 1,000 different species of microbes. So it's like a drop in in the ocean type of thing. Right. So yeah.
Oh, that's really cool. Do you usually recommend any type of food change if somebody comes in with a serious issue like that, or after a fecal transplant?
Yeah, I mean, it depends a little bit on where they're at and how they're feeling, but generally I start with diet, switching them to a species appropriate diet that they can handle. Some dogs that will be a raw diet, some dogs it will be a lightly cooked diet or freeze dried, depending on what they can handle. And then in some of them, especially if they also have skin issues and ear infections, recurrent ear infections, I will do food sensitivity testing to see what's going on, what foods they have an issue with. Because if I don't remove that food while I'm trying to heal the gut, it's like throwing oil in the fire while trying to extinguish it. So that doesn't work all that well. So I will eliminate those, make sure that the diet is appropriate. And then I send them home with enzymes and a formula called Ion Gut, which is a soil-based product that helps strengthening the tight junctions between the cells of the gut lining so that the gut is not leaky. And yeah, that's about all I do to start with. I always go, slow and simple, just to see what's happening. And then once the gut is a little bit healthier, and they have their diet on board for a little bit, maybe 2-3 weeks or so, I will start doing fecal transplants. Yeah.
That's really cool. We've come so far in this, and I love how we're just kind of arcing back to a really natural approach. And I know there were many out there for a long time taking very natural approaches, but this seems very powerful.
Yeah.
It's very exciting.
Yeah, it is.
So how can people at home help to keep their pet's microbiome balanced? What can I do at my house for my pet besides keep them away from the Wi-Fi?
Yeah. So turning that off at night or when you're not home at least, or even better, go wired. Don't buy any smart devices if possible. Keep your cell phones away from your animals, especially if you have like a pocket dog that you're always wearing, having in your bag. Don't have your cell phone right next to them. Right. But then also, what are you using as cleaning materials? Make sure that they're natural, they're not disinfectant. If you do need a disinfectant, you can always use lemon juice or apple cider vinegar, for example, a little bit. But again, I don't use disinfectants at home or anywhere else. I don't use them on my skin or my hands, and I'm still alive and doing quite well. So it's really not necessary to overly sanitize everything. If something falls on the floor, I will still eat it. I mean, obviously it depends on where. If it's in a public bathroom, I probably wouldn't. But in my own home. So keep your cleaning supplies really simple. I mean, what I have dish soap that's from one of Whole Foods or one of those places that is biodegradable, and that's what I use for my entire house. I don't have 20,000 different cleaners. And then, unplug these Glad and other plug-in scented things. Get rid of your scented candles. Use well, I guess aside from dish soap, I do have laundry soap, but the same thing. It's all natural, doesn't kill anything.
None of the Lysol laundry soap, right?
Definitely not. No. So you want to get away from all the things that kill, and that can also be essential oils. I'm a big. I think that essential oils can be great, but they can also cause an imbalance in the microbiome or contribute to it, because a lot of these essential oils have antibacterial properties. So a lot of people are using essential oils in the mouth of their animals or themselves. And I'm just not a fan of that, because you're messing with the microbiome of the mouth. And that's where, the microbes originate, and then they go through the GI tract naturally, right? So, be cognizant of that. What else? Close your windows when your neighbors are spraying stuff, and don't let your animals go out. And maybe if you can, and you have a somewhat good relationship with your neighbors, talk to them about it and see if they'd be willing to go a more natural route. What else? And then obviously diet and that sort of thing. And then lifestyle obviously is important too. How are you stressed when you come home? Are you stressed in the family? Are you fighting a lot with your spouse? Those types of things will also affect your animal's microbiome in general, aside from just affecting them too. But and I know nobody is perfect. I'm not saying you shouldn't be fighting anymore or anything like that, but it's, just pay attention to these things, because they all affect the microbes as well.
Wow. Well, I want to thank you so much for joining us today. There is so much to learn on this topic, and I feel like I could keep asking you questions for the next 3 hours, because it's so interesting to me. But one thing I love how all of this relates to is food. I always say, whatever you give your dog, you're feeding his microbes. They do a lot of the grunt work. They're breaking down a lot of the food first. And so whatever foods you choose, that's who you're going to be encouraging to survive and win within your dog.
Yeah,
definitely. So I think diet plays a huge part in keeping things balanced.
Yeah, and especially in the human field, where they don't use fecal transplants, aside from, if you have a C. diff infection. A lot of these researchers who are, specialists in microbiome, they say that diet has the biggest influence on the microbiome. So if you're wanting to manipulate the microbiome, do it through diet for them. I mean, obviously, as in the animal field, we can do fecal transplant for, on every animal, no matter what. We don't have, restrictions that way. But definitely, they benefit from a variety. I always tell people, vary foods, give them a variety of things, give them the rainbow of vegetables and a little bit of fruit, so that they get all the colors, because of all the polyphenols in the foods are what nourishes the microbiome as well. So they eat some of that.
Yeah. So foods that have, for dogs, you wanted a good amount of meat. And then some nice vegetables and some fruits as well.
Yeah. Obviously, a little bit lower on the fruit amount, because it's really sugary. But variety, and best obviously is organic. But go into the store and buy a variety of vegetables, and then blend them up. Stick them in the blender, because dogs and cats don't have the digestive power to break down fiber like a cow does. For example, we humans are sort of somewhere in between. You want to blend it down and then feed it, so that they can actually get the nutrients from these plant materials.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, again, thank you so much for joining us. Again, I will keep going on and on if I'm not careful. So thank you, everyone who's joined us as well. For more on the microbiome, join us next week. We're going to dive a little bit deeper. We're going to talk more about food and stuff. We'll answer any questions that you may have. And that's what it's really going to be about next week, is answering your questions. So put your questions into the comments for this episode. It'll be easiest if you put them on the Steve's Real Food Facebook page. That way I can find them easily. And then we will answer them next week. And then also don't forget to join us January 24th and 25th for our webinar on the microbiome. You can find the registration link for that right on the Steve's Real Food Facebook page. Thank you so much, Dr. Suter. It was a ball talking with you today, and I'm really excited to dive into some audience questions next week and see what people want to know.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for having me, Brad. It's an honor, and thank you for everyone listening out there. And yeah, bring your questions.
Yep, absolutely. Ask away. We want to know what you guys want to know. Well, have a great day. Have some fun. Go pet your dog. Go play with your cat, and we will see you next week.
All right. Bye, everyone.